How we doing, everybody? UFC Thoughts here, and today, I was looking at the rankings, I was thinking about, guys coming into the UFC, that are going to be able to do something in the divisions, and then I was looking at some of the older guys, and I was like, I wonder who's going to be out of the rankings soon. So, I decided to turn this video up. I'm going to talk about fighters that I think will be out of the rankings by next year, or like by the end of next year's cycle. You get what I'm saying. But let's start with flyweight. Flyweight, I kind of had trouble picking one of these two guys, but I went with Cody Duran. Tim Elliott would also work as well, or Matt Schnell. I don't know if Matt Schnell fully retired after the fight with Cody Duran, but I went with Cody Duran anyways, because I'm trying to think about, besides one guy, retirement, unretirement kind of things. Cody Duran, he's alright at fighting, he's alright. He has a fight with Joshua Van coming up this next pay-per-view, December 7th, against Joshua Van, of course. Now, I'm not going to be oh, I'm picking Joshua Van, but that is a very tough fight for both Cody and Joshua Van, and that's definitely a fight that Cody Duran could lose. Cody Duran has decent wrestling. His striking is getting there. He is kind of powerful on the feet as well. His chin has seemingly given him big issues, especially in the Saeed Nurmagomedov fight. In the Matt Schnell fight, he did get rocked. Bruno Silva, of course, he was winning that fight up to that point until he just got cracked with a huge shot. So I think that Cody Duran, maybe he doesn't lose to Joshua Van. Maybe he beats Joshua Van, but I think that he does lose to a lot of the guys in the top 15. So I don't think we'll be seeing Cody Duran in the rankings for that much longer. We move to bantamweight.
Kyler Phillips, get your ass in here! If you can ever get your house in order!
Kyler Phillips looked like shit against Rob Font. And I am still upset at him. I'm not over it. I'm not over him fighting like a fucking garbage man. I'm not over it. He fought like shit. I'm gonna trash him a little bit, alright? You kind of deserve this, dude. You suck. You kind of deserve it. He dropped, he's number 12. He isn't really the most active guy either, is Kyler Phillips. Honestly, they could do Kyler Phillips versus Montel Jackson next as a fight. I think Montel Jackson probably would beat Kyler Phillips. I think he'd probably chin him, possibly. Kyler Phillips, it seems like he regressed a lot from that Pedro Munoz performance, where he just looked like this great guy that we were like, oh my god, this dude's going to become... He's finally coming into himself. And then in that Rob Font fight, literally all progress that we needed to see for Kyler Phillips just disappeared. His striking didn't look good anymore, even though that was his main thing was his striking. He's the Matrix. He's super, calm and collected on the feet. His striking looked like utter shit. His cardio that we saw improved in that Pedro Munoz fight looked like utter shit. His grappling looked like shit past the first round. It looked like utter garbage. Yeah, Kyler Phillips probably won't be in the rankings for that much longer. It seems like, I don't know if he's taking it super serious. He looked in worse shape for this fight than he did in the Pedro Munoz fight. I don't know. I don't think we're going to be seeing Kyler Phillips for that much longer. We move to featherweight. I went with Edson Barbosa on this one. Now, this is kind of mean because he is so old, but Edson Barbosa, if you don't know, is on that rumored UFC Seattle card against Steve Garcia. And that does seem like a fight that Edson Barbosa can definitely win. Those are seemingly the fights that Edson does win, is when he's fighting kind of like a gritty up-and-comer like a Billy Quarantillo and he just chins them. But I think that Edson Barbosa, he didn't look... He looked really bad. Not bad, but he just didn't really look like himself in that Lerone Murphy fight. It's one of those fights where you really see the age come through in a fighter. Kind of, what's another fight where it looked like age just absolutely touched the person? You know what I'm talking about, where someone finally starts to look their age and they just seem so slow. They can't really get offense going. I mean, Edson literally like slipped when trying to throw a spinning wheel kick, which was just kind of sad at a point. And I think Steve Garcia hits pretty hard. I'm not gonna leak that I'm picking Steve Garcia, but that is definitely a hard fight for an Edson Barbosa going up against a guy who also can wrestle a little bit, like we saw that in the Kyle Nelson fight, that Steve Garcia can reverse positions and then get in dominant positions and just unload a lot of damage on people. And Edson, he's older. He isn't, he always seemingly gets rocked. He has like that weird like jitterbug style where he's like always kind of like wobbly on his legs at all times for some reason. You know what I mean? When he like throws a punch, he seems off balance at all times. I don't know how much longer we're going to see Edson Barbosa in the rankings, sadly. So I love Edson, but it was either him or like Dan Ige. But I think Dan Ige, he's still young-ish, where I think he can like put off those unranked guys. I don't know if Edson Barbosa can do that. We move to lightweight. Lightweight was tricky. I had to pick between two guys, and I ended up picking Jaylen Turner. I think Jaylen Turner's a little in his head. Mentally, I think he has a huge mental block. I love Jaylen Turner. I mess with Jaylen Turner heavy. He's really cool. But I think that he is mentally not the strongest right now, and he's taken a huge break after that UFC 300 fight. Jaylen Turner can become something very special, and I hope he does. It was either I picked Jaylen Turner or Benoit Saint-Denis. But I think Benoit, he's not going to fight for a while, and I think that he'll just lumber in that top 15. While Jaylen Turner, I think he'll probably get a fight soon. Probably against some fucking killer, unranked guy, or maybe it is Jaylen Turner, Benoit Saint-Denis. And that's a very winnable fight for both of those guys. I think Jaylen Turner, his cardio hasn't always been the best. His takedown defense really showed in that Renato Moicano fight, who is very underrated. Renato Moicano is very underrated. Jaylen and Benoit are both of his sons. But I think Jaylen Turner, there's a lot of guys coming up in the division that just have strictly very solid wrestling base takedowns. And Jaylen Turner, while he does hit very hard and is very, sound on the feet, it is something to note that, Dan Hooker and Mateusz Gamrot were landing on him and were, seemingly hurting him. You know what I mean? That is something to note. But, I think Jaylen Turner probably doesn't stay in the top 15 at the end of next year. And if he does, I will be very happy. But that is just something to note. We move to welterweight. Now, I did say earlier I wasn't going with retirements, but for some of these, welterweight is kind of just tough to pick somebody. I ended up going with Wonderboy. I'm with Wonderboy Thompson. One, I think that he probably will lose his next fight depending on who they match him up with. I think that is probably something that will happen. And I also think Wonderboy is going to retire next year. I think he probably has one more fight left in him. I don't know how many fights left he has on his contract. He's 41 years old. And welterweight is not a division where age is you need to be kind of young to have a lot of success. And Wonderboy, he got brutally KO'd by Joaquin Buckley. Prior to that, he took a year off from the Shavkat Rakhmonov fight. Prior to that, he took another year off. He's a one-a-year kind of guy. He'll be 42 probably the next time he fights. I imagine they give him some fun matchup. I think him versus Michael Venom Page is something that they would love to make for a fight night main event. If Wonderboy wins or loses, I think he should probably retire, because I don't know how much success he would have, because he isn't a very active guy either. I think Wonderboy will probably retire next year, which will be very sad. But, he is very competitive. He's still competitive. He's able to be competitive. But I do think that depending on how they matchmake him, you do a Carlos Prates, I think, is a fight that they would try and make, possibly, with Wonderboy Thompson. And I just don't want to see that. I don't want them to do that to Wonderboy. But yeah, I think that Wonderboy probably will retire next year. We move to middleweight. Listen, man, I'm putting Paulo Costa. Now, people forget, man, Paulo Costa, he's 1-5 in his last 6, or is he 1-4? He's 1-4 in his last 5, yet, albeit great competition, he's fighting really good guys. But that doesn't exclude him from being probably one of the worst ranked middleweights on the roster. Like, that doesn't excuse him for not being really good. You know what I mean? I think Paulo Costa, listen, he just doesn't really... That Strickland performance was really disappointing to me. It was very disappointing. I honestly think that, for one, I think Paulo Costa should move up to light heavyweight. I think he would have more success at light heavyweight than he has at middleweight, and I also think that Paulo probably loses his next fight. Depending on who they matchmake it, I will make a video in the upcoming days on my main events for the confirmed events for next year. I'll have a video out soon about that. I think you guys will really like it. But I think Paulo Costa, Luke Rockhold fight was really close, man. I think Paulo Costa probably loses to a lot of guys in this top 15. I think he does. I think he loses to a lot of the guys in the top 15. I don't really see him having like a career renaissance where he massively improves. Paulo Costa has never been the guy to massively improve anyways. Especially in the last couple of years. He's been kind of the same guy for the past couple of years. We haven't seen like a massive improvement with his boxing, with his kickboxing, with his wrestling and jiu-jitsu. He's kind of been the same dude the entire fucking time, and I don't see improvements happening. He's dropped down to 11, man. This guy used to be like number 1, and now he's number 11. Listen, he's a fan favorite. They'll give him favorable matchups because he is a fan favorite, but they'll keep putting him on pay-per-views. I don't see him staying in the top 15 for that much longer. We move to light heavyweight. I went with Anthony Smith. Kind of like a mix of him not being really good, and I think he probably could retire next year. Anthony Smith, what is he, 36, 37? He's 36 years old. All right, it's not that bad. But I do think that Anthony Smith will lose to Dominic Reyes. I think he gets chinned by Dominic Reyes. And I think that there's a lot of light heavyweight guys on the come-up, like a Ming Yang Zhang, like an Umar Sy, who definitely will beat Anthony Smith. I think that Anthony Smith, he might be a journeyman for... I think if you rematch him and Vitor Petrino, I think Vitor Petrino beats him. I think Vitor Petrino just had a huge lapse of judgment call in their fight. I think he probably whoops Anthony Smith in that fight. Anthony Smith looked like utter dog shit against Roman Dolidze, even in the striking. No bueno, my friend. No bueno. Get your ass out of here. I think Anthony Smith is going to... He doesn't improve massively either. He's kind of another guy who just doesn't really improve whatsoever. You know what I mean? So I think Anthony Smith will probably lose to Dominic Reyes, maybe drop a little bit, probably drop under Bogdan Guskov, and then they'll probably make him up with an unranked light heavyweight guy on the come-up, and he'll probably get beat by them too. So I think Anthony Smith doesn't have a lot of... His expiration date is coming up. Maybe he does retire. Maybe he goes to a full-time analyst job. Maybe he becomes a full-time podcaster. It wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, I think Anthony Smith probably going to drop out of that top 15. We move to heavyweight. This might upset some people. I'm putting Jon Jones. I think Jon Jones is not going to fight Tom Aspinall. I don't even think he fights Alex Pereira. I think Jon Jones retires next year. I don't think he fights at all. I think we're going to have the same thing happen that happened when he was supposed to fight Francis Ngannou. I think that it's going to be a long, drawn-out process where Jon Jones doesn't fight. He says that they're talking about it. Oh, negotiations this, negotiations that. I think that's going to be a huge, long, drawn-out process of that. Him saying that they're not going to pay him enough money, even though they're offering him the biggest contract in UFC history. He'll say that it's not enough for him to take the fight. I think he retires next year, and it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me at all. He's 37 years old. He doesn't have a lot left to do in the sport anyways. Like, even though I do not like the fact that he's not fighting Tom Aspinall, I think it's a bitch move. I get it. I can understand it. He doesn't want to put his legacy on the line, which is a bitch move. Even though it is a bitch move, but I understand where he's coming from. It is just a bitch move, though. I think Jon Jones retires next year. I don't think we see the Aspinall fight. I don't even think we see the Alex Pereira fight. I think we see Jon Jones just draw out, make it a drawn-out process, doesn't even fight, doesn't even get a fight announcement, and he just retires on Twitter. And then we get Tom Aspinall versus the winner of Gan Volkov for the vacant heavyweight title. Or Tom defends against one of them, depending on how it works. But yeah, these are the guys that I think will probably leave the rankings next year. Probably get knocked out of the rankings, either retire out of the rankings or just lose enough to where the UFC is just like, we can't have you in here anymore. You got to fucking bounce. So, yeah. Who are some guys that you think will get bounced out of the rankings? Do you agree with my picks? What would you rate it? Give the video a like. Subscribe if you like this type of content. I'll have that video of main events for the upcoming events for next year, like the announced, confirmed events that are happening. But, yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.